EFed Podcast, the podcast exploring our fantasy wrestling hobby, where the wrestling is written, but the characters are real. I'm your host, Mikey Unlikely, and I'd like to thank you for joining us here on the Atomic Dropcast Network. All right, guys, welcome back to another edition of the EFed Podcast. Excited to have you. Thanks for tuning in for another show. We've been rolling 41 weeks, and speaking of Roland, we've got Roland on the show today. Longtime friend, longtime listener, big supporter of ours. He is over in Defiance Wrestling, in High Octane Wrestling, and much more. He's excited to be here. We're excited to have him. I'm interested in getting into the Fuse Brothers tag team, Gage Blackwood, and much, much more on the show. We've also got a new question of the week. Excited to cover that with you guys. And it's probably the most answered question of all time because it's about the show. So we've got that. We've got the EFed Podcast Spotlight, bringing it back again. It seems like last week drummed up a little business on that front. Happy to see it. You hate to see it, Christy. And basically moving on from there, we've got a great show for you. We've got our ads, which I know everybody loves to hear. But if you don't love the ads, you can head on over to patreon.com/EFed Podcast, where you can get the show ad-free, early, and a whole lot of other benefits over there, including free t-shirt designs, sponsorship, advertisements, anything you want. Check it out, patreon.com/EFed Podcast. That's where you can listen to the show a little early and a little ad-free. Thanks for all our supporters that are over there now. Really want to give a shout out to each and every one of them. The Patreon members are awesome. And if you want to interact with the show on Twitter, you can find us at the EFed Podcast. If you want to interact with the show on Discord, our own little EFed community with guys from every corner of the game, check out the link in the Twitter profile. That's twitter.com/the-EFed-podcast. And click that link in the profile and you'll be transported right into the best Discord on the interwebs. Bold statements. Guys, before we get into the show, let's hear a word from our sponsors. Please support these guys. They love us. We love them. They help us out on a weekly basis, and you can tune into their stuff and support them as well. EFedders helping EFedders. You love to see it.
Occupy Pro Wrestling, putting the smart back into smart mark since 2012 as we grapple with design and media services for wrestlers, promotions, and podcasters. We strive to enjoy pro wrestling in our community and podcast, centered around interviews with wrestlers and fans alike. If you like what you see and hear, check out the central hub for everything we're doing and the latest from our site partners over at occupyprowrestling.com.
All right, guys, the EFed Podcast is very happy to announce its brand new partnership over on Facebook with the Social Media Wrestling Association. The Social Media Wrestling Association, along with its 16,000 member strong influence page known as Generational Wrestling Society, has proven to be the true revolutionary EFed company of Facebook. The SWA welcomes written, video, and audio promos for its talent, as well as results provided in live 2K audio commentary and written results. The SWA is more than just an EFed. With GWS, all areas of the wrestling community are covered. From belt collectors, wrestling news, trivia, and podcasts, and EFEDs. Check them out on Facebook at Social Media Wrestling Association and Generational Wrestling Society. You can give a search for both. Once you join both, you'll be glad to become associated with the society. And we're going to be posting our show on Facebook exclusively on the SWA and GWS sites. And we're very happy to have announced this partnership with the SWA, and you can hear about it here every week. So guys, go check them out. Social Media Wrestling Association on Facebook.
Defiance, an angle-fed boasting 8 years of continuous fantasy wrestling. Defiance offers opportunities for original characters, micros, a standalone website utilizing Backstage 3 script, and a forum hosted on the long-running fwrestling.com, as well as a roster full of some of the most experienced writers in the game. Come see for yourself at defiancewrestling.com. That's defiancewrestling.com.
Hey guys, are you digging this podcast? Well, we really appreciate it. I'd also appreciate it if you check out my other podcast. The Atomic Dropcast is a look back at the wrestling of yesteryear through adult eyes. We watch the wrestling that we watched as kids, as adults, with a couple of beers in our hands. It's a great time. Check it out over at atomicdropcast.com. You can also find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
OCW Fed is a hybrid pro wrestling EFed that combines elements of role play and competitive play using the WWE 2K franchise. Whether you're on PlayStation or Xbox, OCW Fed is a creative outlet for gamers and pro wrestling fans alike. With over 16 years experience producing weekly content and live Twitch events, OCW Fed has a thriving community with handlers from all over the world. If this sounds like your cup of tea, come check us out at OCWFed.com, OCW Fed TV on YouTube, and OCW Fed on Twitch. It's like D&D for wrestling nerds.
Hey everybody, it's Mikey. No, we're not back to the show just yet. First, I want to tell you about my Patreon. Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh no, am I going to have to pay for the podcast? No. The answer is emphatically no. The show has been and forever will be free. No, Brunk, you will not have to pay for the podcast. However, we have been asked by a handful of people how they can help support the show. And we've also been asked, mostly by Fuzz, why we didn't have a Patreon yet. And I quote, "You stupid I can't believe you don't have a Patreon. I will hurt you if you don't take my money now." End quote. That was Fuzz. He's a scary dude. So with that in mind, you can find us at patreon.com/EFed podcast. Contributions start as low as $3 a month. Thank you very much for your consideration. Please get Fuzz off our backs. The EFed question of the week is brought to you by the EWC. The Extreme Wrestling Corporation is the game's longest-running roleplay EFed, having been established in 1997. With over 100 active role players across 4 unique brands, the EWC offers opt-in booking on all of its bi-weekly shows. It's home to Stranglemania and the 4-day wrestling festival known as WrestleFest. The EWC is built on its welcoming community with zero bias and no drama. All styles are welcome. Come check out the EWC today at EWC4life.com. That's EWC, the number 4, life.com. All right, guys, coming up next, the new EFed podcast question of the week. This week's question: we're 40 episodes deep since we started the show. Who's been your favorite guest to hear from so far, and why? I love this because I knew it would be a not highly answered question, and I was right. Here's what we got on the Twitter machine. At Somnia Anna, biased answer is Joe Graham Baker, one of the best people I know and a wonderful person to interact with in this little community that we have. Unbiased answer, Joe Graham Baker. I thought it was the most insightful interview I've heard thus far, and it covered a lot of good topics. Big fan of Joe over there at Anna Somnia. Or at Somnia Anna. Sorry about that. At Stop Banning Noah. Easy. At Sean Warstein was your best guest. I think you should have had him on more often so he can hype me up more than last time. Everyone likes to hear their name mentioned on the show. At HOF Mike Best. Without question, your interview with Mike Best of HOW was not only the greatest TEFP, but one of the greatest interviews in the history of the spoken word medium. A true class act talent and a hell of an individual whose book is on sale now. I love you for that, Mike. At Centurion Real. Everyone is tied for first except Sean Warstein, who was clearly the worst. Oh, bringing the heat. I like that. At Unbreakable SMJ. I can't honestly pick one. All have been really cool, and it's been fun listening to everyone's different stories on how they started along with their journeys. It has been a lot of fun, and I appreciate everyone being honest and truthful in this stuff and telling us how they got into e-wrestling and how they got into wrestling. That's my favorite part of the interviews, and I really enjoyed getting to know everybody. Here are some of the answers we got over on the Discord side of things. At Judge Megan, there's been a lot of good guests on the show that I cannot pick one since they've been informative and the learning experience. Though if I had to pick one, it would be the handler of Graham Baker, because his was very eye-opening and brought awareness to a lot of things. Another one would be Pete, because it's Pete, and he's a great guy. At Seth is Burns, me, because I'm self-centered. Just kidding. Pete, because it was a great listen. At Highlander 4H, Ron Hall McDonhall. I like the one where Mikey talks to and answers himself for 2 hours. Hashtag ratings gold. Ron, that one's unreleased. I don't know how you've heard it. At Ravage, out of the few I've heard, I really enjoyed this week's guest, but Joe, the handler of Graham Baker, is my favorite, and not because he paid me to say that. Seems like that is one of the consensus favorites. I'm glad to hear that. At Darren Zion, some weird dude named Stuvens. Scott Stuvens, there he is. At That Masked Guy, the NVR Fedhead Billy. I've known him for a long time and really enjoyed his interview. I will not confirm or deny that he promised a Triple H singles push if I said this. Get him, bury him, get the sledgehammer out. At MDG Wrestling Game, lots of good ones. I mean, I wouldn't likely be in the hobby had I not listened to the Mike Best interview in December. However, Bobby Dean is one that had me cracking up multiple times, so I have to go with that one. Beautiful. Love that. Love the Bobby Dean interview. So much fun. At Dominic Sanders, I really enjoyed listening to at Alex Smiley, all 3 hours of him. He is a talker, that Alex Smiley, but we love him here. At Irwin109, all 40 have been great, but OCW being the first Caw Fed had to be a pop from me. Love that. OCW Fed, my boy Jason. I love that guy. Shout out to them. Shout out to all of you for answering this week's question of the week. Really appreciate you taking the time. Really appreciate you guys listening to the show. If you want to answer next week's question of the week, it will be posted on Twitter, or actually it is right now. You can hit that comment section, give us your answer, and we'll read it right here on the show next week.
Hey, this is Jay, probably the most unliked handler in EFedding history, and you're listening to the EFed Podcast.
All right, guys, it's time for the EFed Podcast Spotlight segment. And this week, the spotlight is on 5 Boroughs Wrestling. 5BW is an angle fed based out of the 5 boroughs of New York: Bronx, Staten Island, Brooklyn, Manhattan, and Queens. Although they typically do international shows, such as going to London for the Royal Crown and heading back to the 6th in December. That's Toronto, for those of you who don't know. They have shows on the monthly basis. They have spot shows or house shows in the beginning of the month, and they are as important as the big shows. The spot shows are written shorthand. Big shows and pay-per-views are at the end of the month, and they're written in full format. The rules are simple. Show respect to everyone. Don't be a drama starter. Always check up on your characters to see what's going on, and always ask questions. 5BW does have some active championships, including the 5BW Championship, the Freedom Championship, the Fight Championship, and the 5BW Tag Team Championships. Again, I love those tag team titles. Every Fed has them. The Hollywood Bruvs won them. Top 10 wrestlers, no specific order: Samantha Tolson Anderson, Norris Cranley, Darian Andrews, Amy Harrison, Haley Feen, Dakota Mendoza, Luciana Verdoza, Addie A, D6, Larissa Johnson, Amber Rockwell, and Gabe Kane. One of the two. Guys, you can check out 5B Wrestling over at 5BWrestling.com. That's the number 5BWrestling.com. They have a decent amount of good handlers, so they consider them a decent-sized fed. 5BW is also very LGBTQ plus friendly. They accept anyone with learning disabilities, and they're a very friendly bunch that love to have fun and go nuts. P.S. Megan's a huge Finn Balor fan. She had to throw that in. You know how she is. Megan, one of the top supporters of the EFed podcast and EWTs, runs 5 Boroughs Wrestling. Check it out at 5BWrestling.com. That's the number 5BWrestling.com. And we're back with another edition of the EFed Podcast interview series. Guys, I'm so glad to have on with us one of my good friends in the EFed community. We've been playing together for many, many years now in Defiance. Feels like forever. We actually got to meet a couple years ago as well. A good guy, Roland, over in Defiance Wrestling. He's handling characters such as the Fuse Brothers and many more that we're going to hit on here at the show. Roland just signed up at High Octane Wrestling as well, and we're going to go over that and much, much more. So, Roland, thanks very much for taking the time coming on the podcast. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate you being a listener of the podcast How are you doing today?
Mr. Unlikely, how are you? I'm doing all right, my friend. I'm doing pretty good, all things considered. Thanks a lot for having me on, and this should be pretty fun.
I'm excited. Yeah, it's always more fun for me when I get my friends, and I don't mean to say that to people I'm not friends with, because I think by the end of every show, I've made a new friend. But it's always a little bit more fun when I know a little bit more about the characters.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. We've been writing together now for about 3 years. Yeah, I did. I met up with you, Andy Murray, the tennis player, and Stevie a couple years ago when I was living in Chicago. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. So it'll be pretty easy for me on my end, hopefully, and I'll give you a decent enough show. So.
Well, I'm excited. Here we go. We'll start here, Roland. We'll start with the same place we start with everybody, and you already know the question. How'd you get into professional wrestling?
Yeah, so it's kind of there's about 3 stages, I would say, for me. So I think like the earliest memory of my life actually was being about 5 years old. My grandfather would watch wrestling all the time, even though he would deny it, and he said he never would. So he would come over and have it on for me, and I like my mind is pretty foggy on who it was. I still think it was Doink the Clown. Because there's a clown in the ring, and I'm all into it, and I think this is awesome. And I remember my grandfather leaving, and my dad was talking to me after, and he's like, you know that wrestling is, obviously, as everybody says, wrestling is fake. And I just remember being completely devastated, like to the point where I think when I found out Santa Claus wasn't real, which might be a spoiler for some people as well, that didn't even really bother me. But hearing that wrestling wasn't real, like that clown didn't actually believe he was a clown and beat somebody up, I couldn't comprehend it. And then so I didn't follow it. I remember then I watched it again with my grandpa on TV once, and I'm pretty sure Bret Hart was fighting Bob Backlund. And that was
nice.
When Owen got the family member to
94. This is one of the pay-per-views. Yeah, Martha throws the towel in for Bret.
Yeah, so Martha throws a towel in for Bret, and I didn't really know any of the characters at the time. Like, Bret had no context for me, but I was devastated again. I was just like, how could this happen?
Wrestling has broken your heart so many times.
Like, why did this take place? This brother just cost his own brother, who has to love him. Like, I couldn't deal with it, so I didn't watch it again. So for me, like, I really got into it, I think, as everybody did during the Attitude Era. Like, I'm originally from Toronto, Canada. So what I say is, like, half my family's in the US, half my family's in Canada. There's not a lot of difference, in my opinion, between both countries. But, like, you guys are 10 times the size of us, right? So the difference being when there's an athlete outside of hockey, because everybody is Canadian in hockey, is like, when somebody makes it outside of hockey, the whole country knows about it. So, like, I always give the example to a friend, and I say my grandmother in America, if I would have said to her who Stone Cold Steve Austin is or who Roman Reigns is, she probably wouldn't be able to tell me because she never watched wrestling. But if I say to my Canadian grandmother, do you know who Bret Hart is? Like, everybody knows who Bret Hart is. So Bret was the one that obviously drew me in, and then I put the dots together that was the guy I was devastated about losing the title years ago. So it was, right around when he was turning heel, after the double switch with Austin, when he did the whole, face in Canada, heel in America. I was
1997. Yeah, me and Brian just went over that on Atomic Dropcast.
Like, I was bought into it right then and there. I was all about it. I still remember being at my grandparents' place one night, and when they ran the pay-per-views, then you could just go to the channel and it would be all like fuzzed out. Yeah, but you get the audio. So I was just so into Bret Hart, and he was fighting the Patriot. I want to say like ground zero, right? Yeah. And so my brother and I are in like the living room, in the family room, and my grandparents and my parents are off in the living room, wherever. And we listened to the whole thing on scrambled TV. And I'm just a nervous wreck thinking that even though I know it's storyline driven, I'm like, they're going to make Bret Hart lose the belt to the Patriot. Like, he's he's this American ambassador. He's gonna win it. And I mean, the me now would say, okay, they just introduced this new character. They're not gonna have Brett drop the title yet.
Sure. But as a kid,
I'm hanging on the edge of just a fuzzed out TV show. And I didn't even know who had who in a move, but then I hear like someone's tapping and then Brett's music plays. So I assume he won. And then I just, I
lost it. Yeah.
Absolutely loved it. So he was the main guy, him and Owen, because I mean, everybody knows who they were in Canada. And then, you know, I didn't really like WCW a lot, but I would watch they would have the Saturday show or whatever it was.
Yeah.
My memory of WCW won't be that good, but I'll need you to like point me in the right direction.
I'm not a big WCW guy either. I think it was Saturday. It was a morning show, right?
Yeah. It was. I think it was a morning show, and there was just this guy that came on TV. He had like yellow and black lion tights, and I'm like, this guy's kind of cool. He was as vanilla baby face as you could get, and his name was Chris Jericho. And unlike Brett, though, I didn't know he was Canadian until later on.
Yeah.
But I just liked him, and I would watch, and I still remember like one of the very first WCW Thunders, where like he came out, and he lost a match the week before, and he had like ripped the ring announcer's ring jacket or something. So he came out to apologize, and he like gave him a new jacket. And I'm like, this is what a nice guy, you know? And then he lost that match, and then he ripped the ring announcer's jacket again and broke the portrait that he gave him of himself too. And I was like, I'm not that big on WCW, but I love this guy, and I'll watch everything he does.
And lo and behold, 30 years later, he's still wrestling.
Yeah, it's crazy, but I never would have pegged him to be like that successful, which, I mean, a credit to him, and obviously don't need to sing his praises and reinventing himself a million times. But yeah, I was always WWE, even when Brett, you know, screwed Brett, which I do believe in today's world, as much as it pains me to admit, but I couldn't really get into WCW. There's a friend of mine that lived, you know, 5-10 minutes away, and I'd always go to his place for pay-per-views all the time. We'd watch. And one time I went over for a WCW one, and I can't remember it either, but I think it was like Hogan and Flair, or Piper and Flair in a steel cage, and the main event ended with like a sleeper hold or something. and they went off the air like 40 minutes before the pay-per-view would normally end. So I called my mom, and I'm like, Mom, I need to get picked up. Can you come pick me up early? And she's like, did you have a good time? And I just remember, like, I didn't answer at first. I'm just standing there, I'm like, I don't know. and she's like, did you get into a fight with your friend? I'm like, no, it's not like that. I don't know if I like this show. I can't comprehend it right now. So, I mean, that's how I got into wrestling. I was obviously big on WWE and the Attitude Era, and when Brett left, like, still loved Owen, and obviously Stone Cold and The Rock and all of that. Edge and Christian were great too. They grew up just like an hour away from where I grew up. And then Test is from my hometown initially, so he was like a big deal over here as well. So yeah, that's pretty much how I got into it.
You just you gravitated towards all the Canadian wrestlers. That's crazy.
Yeah, and honestly, it was never done on purpose. Like my top 5 are probably like Brett, Owen, Jericho, Edge, and Christian. I always thought Christian got a short end of the stick in his singles run and deserved way more. But I mean, to be fair, like some of the guys that I really like now, I love Daniel Bryan. I really like Orange Cassidy in AEW. So CM Punk, there's not always they need to be Canadian or so. That's just kind of how it
seems. Yeah.
yeah. It was just, I mean, Brett was one thing because obviously, like,
he's a national hero.
Yeah, people have legit advocated for him to be on like the $5 bill in Canada or something. And like it got legitimate traction at a time, which I would not be opposed to. I would I would do that.
Well, very good. Well, how did you get into the wild world of EFedding then? Was it did Bret Hart drag you into that too?
No, I mean, so I'm in grade school, high school, maybe it could have been grade 8, could have been grade 9. Regardless, I loved wrestling, as did everybody at that time. And these two guys in my class were just like, "Oh, you like wrestling? Come try this thing out. And it's called e-wrestling, and you can write for it." I'm like, "Oh, okay, sure." So it was called Pinnacle of Insane Wrestling, and it was basically like so PIW. It was basically like an Angel Fire, really like low end type of website. So when I was a kid and I would wrestle my brother and my dad and other things, he said, "Oh, if you ever become a real wrestler, your nickname should be LLB." So LLB is, which I've realized now doesn't make sense in the U.S. LLB is the is your degree, your law degree. So if you're going to be a lawyer, which I wanted to be when I was like 10, 11, 12 years old, you're an LLB.
Okay.
In Canada and in the UK, I believe in the UK, but not in America. You use different terminology. So regardless, I needed a character, so it was LLB. So that's what I was. He was a wrestling lawyer. I feel like, when I listen to the podcast and stuff, a lot of people have the same stories, like how they got into wrestling. And then I think we've all had a character that we created that is like meant to be ourself, So,
yeah, absolutely.
Like Mikey Unlikely is you, right?
It's clearly me, yeah.
Yeah, you're clearly not Duke Gibbons, Or
no,
whatever.
No.
So, although
I have some of those in my family, though.
yeah, okay, fair enough. And that's a sidetrack for a side story for another time. How much I love the Gibbons, but yeah. So LLB was me, and he's a wrestling lawyer. He would interrupt people by saying objection, and then. His last phrase it wasn't like, "That's the bottom line because Stone Cold said so." It would be, "I rest my case." And, his moveset was, he had a spear, which was the erroneous conclusion. He had 2 finishing moves, which was a brainbuster, which was the hung jury, and then modified Texas cloverleaf, which was the cross-examination. So his way of looking at things was he was going to make you guilty in the ring, and when you tap out, you're saying you're guilty, right? And
it's like the gavel hitting, yeah.
Yeah, and the crowd would have gavels in their hand, and like the Atlanta Braves, they would do like a tomahawk with it, but be like, guilty, guilty, guilty.
Yeah, I mean, for a very first character, that is incredibly deep.
Thank you. I mean, it wasn't my idea; it was my dad's. But
you ran with it.
I ran with it, and like the best compliment I ever got was somebody said, "This is like an Undertaker character, where the gimmick is still ridiculous, but it just works because it's just been accepted to be that, And he was like, LLB wasn't the size of the Undertaker. He was like Bret Hart, basically, like my size.
Yeah.
But it was, it was cool. I really liked it. A lot of people really liked the character. But so what happened was, I still am a shit writer. But
I don't think so.
But thank you. But I'm not. Well, regardless, at least back then, I was terrible, man.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. Our first writers, yeah. Your first role plays, your first angles, whatever the case, they're gonna be bad.
Dude, it was so bad. I remember like writing a paragraph role play. It had nothing to do with LLB. Like, he didn't say objection or anything. It's just like, yeah, why don't you go like date your mom or something like that? Get out of my face. Like, whatever, right? Just
ooh,
just
nice burn.
Terrible. Yeah, absolutely terrible stuff. But what happened was, so my high school friends were really just running it for a different guy who had left and came back like a couple months in. And his name is John Cusimano. He's actually still talk to him a little bit to this day. I should get him to follow the podcast and all of that too, because he's a pretty talkative, interesting guy. He's a really good dude. So he came back, right? And then he was like really good at making graphics and really good at building websites. And he really just transformed PIW to be like looking like it was a legitimate place. So
move from Angel Fire to looking nice.
Yeah. And then like in my circle, at least, or the one that I knew of the most, was FWO, Fans Wrestling Organization, which was run by Travis Bevan, which I believe he also worked a little bit in WWF legitimately, and had like a Microsoft job, and he was in Seattle and whatnot. Like the website was excellent. The writers were like, this was the be all and end all place, right?
Sure.
So the place where everybody wanted to go at the time, or at least in the circle I was in. So what happened was like PIW kind of started to get a lot of fame and status just based off of, wow, this like website is really good. So, the bad writers had to become better writers. And if you didn't, you kind of got dropped out. Like, I think Seth asked something like a question, where is Iceman? And I can actually explain that later. That ties in. But yeah, like you really had to become a better writer. So like I really tried to make an effort to like not have, a lot of typos in my stuff, to really try and do things with the characters that I would read on like some of the more better places, like the better read places like FW or other feds as well. So then like it was a crazy period in e-wrestling, because I would be on my computer, I'd be on my AOL, and the second you sign on, you get like 40 messages of people just wanting to be like, hey, can you join my fed? Hey, can you join my fed? And it's obviously in context, it's just a game. It's a fun hobby. By no means do I turn around and think I'm like super awesome at all or anything like that. but it was nice to know that like what you were doing, people actually liked it and read it. Like by no means, like
word was getting around.
Yeah, and look, I love e-wrestling today, and I'm actually glad it's not as populated, as insane as it was back then. But because it was maybe even a little bit too much. But certainly those days during the Attitude Era, like it was nuts. Everybody I felt like was doing it, or at least that's the impression that came to me, right? So PIW got a lot of status, so I was able to like really try and write better, and yeah, it was a lot of fun for the few years that it was around for. And then I got an opportunity to write a little bit in FWO, which it had a minor league at the time. So I joined that, and I joined that with the tag team I decided was going to be like the younger brothers to LLB, the Fuse brothers, Tyler and Connor. Who,
nice.
Their mantra at that time, they were a complete ripoff of Mario and Luigi, and they just think wrestling in the whole world is a video game. That you start in World 1, Level 1, and you work your way up, and
nothing's changed since. No.
And nothing has changed since. I think like what I've learned is, I mean, yeah, you can push like some video game context, or like even back then, I'd have the brothers come down and like they have a little powdered blue question mark box, and then Connor opens it up in the middle of the match, and it's like a bunch of Lego mushrooms, and he throws them in his mouth and he hulks up, or I've done like the Game Shark now, where they have a big pinata Game Shark and they smash it over someone's head and it breaks into a million pieces. Like I like that stuff. I think for me, maybe the only thing that's changed now is like I don't completely douse them in the gimmick. Like you gotta have a little bit of leeway,
a little bit of realism.
Yeah, to do some different things, to not go too extreme. So I just try and pick, like, I say to myself, hey, you pick one power up, that's the power up you can push for the next arc or two, right? So, or none
and then you can break out something new. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and then you can do something new, or like right now, I think I have them doing some singles runs. So I have the older brother Tyler, who's always been the serious jackass, like completely want to just drop video game gimmicks altogether and not be
He's grown up.
typecast. Yeah, he's obsessed with like not being a typecasted tag teamer, and will be obsessed with like just breaking that stereotype where Connor is the younger, stupid, annoying brother, and I can channel my annoying side of myself, which there's lots of, and just double down on everything, you know. So yeah, so that was how I got into things, and then I did actually get to run my own place too for a couple years. So I called it Action Wrestling. It was popular for the time. It was a lot of fun. I basically did it because I got tired of having a lot of people message me and be like, hey, join my place. And then I would join, and it'd last 2 shows and it'd be dead.
It was shut down. Yeah.
So I created,
so then you messaged them all back and said, hey, join my Fed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll keep it running for at least more than 1 show, which I did. The owner character basically was why I wanted to do it. I had the guy, his name was Reed Young, and he's basically just like, he was meant to be 30 years old, like a billionaire, and just completely inept and useless at his job. So like the first promo the Fed ever did was like, he was coming out and he's like, Action Wrestling is the best place ever. Like, we are already number 1. Like, we're going to run forever. This is going to be the great, like, just, and then just, he's lazy, and he doesn't do anything. And it would give an excuse for if a handler ever dropped off the face of the earth, Reed Young would just be like, oh, I guess I forgot to sign him or whatever. So it was a lot of fun. I know it was a lot of fun to run with that character for different people. But then, a couple years in, I kind of lose interest, and I'm a dumb kid at that point, right? So yeah, it just didn't. It ran for a couple years. It stopped. I wasn't as motivated. Everyone was like, "Okay, we'll see you later," and then they ended up doing some other things. So, but yeah, I mean, that's how I got into things, and that's kind of my early history there. If I
no
answered
doubt.
that, okay. Yeah.
So you did your thing as a singles character, and then you tried on the size of a tag team, handled by one handler, and then you went straight to Fed head.
Yeah.
I see a pattern of escalation here, Roland.
I mean, I have all the respect in the world for anybody in this hobby doing anything. I think it's super cool, but I have utmost respect for any Fed head that puts up with, just regular nonsense of handlers and just people leaving and getting your hopes up on, this guy's a really good writer, and then maybe he goes, or just having to deal with a lot of people at once. So it was a lot of fun. I had a great time with it. The Reed Young character was terrific, and I do want to bring Action Wrestling back one day, just if not for a place to run my other characters that I have, like LLB and things like that. But yeah, it was a lot of fun at its time, and I got nothing but good memories. So
that's awesome, and it's great that you had a fun character that not only stemmed from a childhood story, but that you grew and expanded on. Like I said, most people don't have such a deep character to start with. My guy was the Undertaker ripoff who walked to the ring and was going to bury you, and all of the fun, stupid things that people do early on.
Yeah.
So it's nice that you had that creative itch right from the get-go.
Yeah, I like your side though. I like what you're saying there too. I almost think your path is just as much fun. Where if I was like, what would I have done if who would have been my pick base, and would I have done if I had to pick? Because I remember listening to Seth's podcast, right, and he's like, yeah, I had to pick Val Venus as a character, and I'm like, yeah, you did, Seth. Yeah, you did.
You had to, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know.
You wanted to be Val. Hello, ladies.
Absolutely. Who didn't? Who didn't? He was, man, you look back at those days and like, yeah, it is terrible wrestling. But at that time, I thought it was great wrestling.
It was great. Yeah. I don't care what anybody says. D'Lo Brown, Val Venus, X-Pac. That's my shit right there.
I guess to tie it into like e-wrestling a little bit, when I look back at Action Wrestling, I think of some of the angles and the storylines that I ran. I'm like, oh my God, it's actually not that good. Like, my mind was so like Vince Russo, where it's like, yep, every match you got to have a ref bump. you got to get that next
Blood.
rep in, the slides to make the 3 count, but the guy kicks out. Yeah, blood, like just, gimmick match after gimmick match. You can't just blow it off with a wrestling match, So it's, but to get back to your main point, I think it would have been cool to like pick up Be the Rock or something along those lines too. I just kind of
you never did the real wrestler thing.
I never did. I just because I think like when I joined PAW, I didn't know it could be something else, right? Like I just thought you had to create your own guy, and I was in this little bubble, and then it just blows up to be something bigger, and then by then maybe it's too late to do something like that, and then there's some people who will be like, oh well, you're like we have an attitude that you can't be writing at a place like that, or whatever the case may be. But I always like listening to whoever you have on. I think it's cool to hear like how they got into wrestling.
Yeah, then we were talking about this before the show. As some of our favorite parts are how'd you get into wrestling and how'd you get into e-wrestling, because it's so fascinating.
Yeah, it really is. It's like I say like to give I was talking to Brian, who I believe he was in an e-wrestling. I mean, we all kind of were at around the same time in the Attitude Era.
Yeah.
And I might not have it correct for him, but I might have been, sorry, I'm kind of messing this up, but someone I was speaking to, and they had never even heard of FWO before, and that to me would be like, you never heard of FWO, but then they say where they came from, and they're like, yeah, I was in F2 EH3 or WWE WCW ECW 2K1 Fed, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I never heard of that. And they're like, what? Like,
that's unbelievable. Yeah.
Like I always felt like there was like the FWO kind of realm, and then there was like the forms that we still have connected to Defiance,
F wrestling
forms, and like CSWA or something, I want to say, and like that group there, that was like a different kind of circle, and I felt like the people in my circle were like, you don't go to that circle, they can't write well, like they're not good, and which is all nonsense anyway, but at least that was kind of my understanding how things were when I was growing up through the hobby. So
that's awesome. And so after the Fed head thing and your run as a Fed head, what'd you get into after that?
Honestly, at that point, I stopped writing. I wasn't that into it. I kind of stopped following wrestling too, as I feel like a lot of people did.
Is it burnout or just moving on to something different?
I think I just got interested in like girls and friends, and not saying you can't have those interests doing e-wrestling.
Sure.
But just
it consumed your time.
Yeah, and like, so I should also say, obviously, it will come up to I got a brother who is a wrestler as well, does writing, and he's in Defiance too.
Yes, he's gonna be on the show here in like 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah, so Cody Rhodes, I think, in AEW. Before his intro, there's that saying, it's like wrestling has more than one royal family, something like that. Well, like e-wrestling only has one royal family. It's me and my brother. So, so I'm sticking to. So to kind of explain that, because I guess that will perhaps explain how I got back into the hobby. As a kid, so my brother is a couple years younger.
Well, don't spoil his interview.
No, I won't. This basically just kind of explains.
Just grazes, yeah. Okay.
So, my brother's a couple years younger. Growing up all the time, my parents are in my ear every single day. Include your brother. Include your brother. Include your brother. So, when I'm sitting in their basement writing role plays and stuff, my mom's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm writing for e-wrestling." Like, "Well, okay, what are you doing?" And she's like, "Well, okay, you do whatever you need to do, but include your brother." So I did. So I won't talk much about his character at all or anything like that, but he wrote in action too. And then when I left the hobby, he left too, but then he got back into it and was writing for GCW. And he'd always say, he's like, "Man, like, come on back, come write. It's fun." And I was just, whatever. I'll kind of loosely follow you. And that's where I learned of Andy Murray, the tennis player.
I was going to say, I thought GCW might have been the same one he was in.
Yeah, yeah, I do know that. So yeah, Ross was in that place in GCW. Ross character, um, I don't know, Valentine something, some female character and some male character, something along those.
Is it V? It was Vivica J. Valentine.
Yep, that's what it is. So I mean, I didn't know who Andy Murray was. I didn't know who Billy was. I just kind of knew of them. I'd occasionally look stuff up just to see how his character was doing. He can explain all the other stuff in his interview. But, and then I guess like I did come back a little bit here and there to write in like the Asylum, which was e-fighting, which I really liked doing, which had a lot of crazy stories and stuff in it too. But then, you know, about like 3-4 years ago, I was just sitting around one day with not a lot going on, and I don't even know how I came across the forum and how I came across Defiance, but I saw Andy Murray, and I was like, I remember that tennis player from GCW, and I just decided to make up some character that I had like no real beliefs and ties to, other than just make him from Scotland because I was living in Scotland, or I did live in Scotland, and I do again. But
thus the introduction of Gage Blackwood.
Yeah, and threw it up on the board. You guys said yes, and here we are.
And I immediately fell in love with the character. He was part of the Defiance DOC division, which at the time was a brand new fledgling division for strong style, hard hitting, beat the shit out of your opponent wrestling.
Yeah, thanks, man. I think like I've always wanted to at least challenge myself in writing, and I can feel like I want to write maybe a serious character. I can have some characters that are a little bit more funny, but I also would like to make them serious at times. And I think with Gage, it was just, I say this as a compliment, I guess, to the character or whatever. It's like, I don't really care about him. And what I mean by that is, I guess that's why he's worked out well. I have no real direction that I want to take him. I just knew, like, I bring him in, have him be kind of like this Eddie Guerrero, kind of Chris Benoit, Bret Hart type of wrestler who just wants to try hard and is like a noble fighter. And from there, we'll whatever, right?
He was a great baby face coming in. I enjoyed him. I can't remember the pay-per-view. I can't remember what it was, but his first big match, it's the only match I remember from the card, because he had a big bump at the end where he went through some shit.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't believe it because I was rooting for him so hard in my head. I was so invested in Gage Blackwood from the jump.
Thanks,
it was great.
Yeah, thanks. I know, like, I've talked to my brother about it before, and he said, like, oh, Gage is your worst character. He's just kind of there. But I
love him.
Thanks. I think it's worked out good. Like I said, he's probably my one character in my entire run of everything that I don't really have like a real set direction for, and that works out great because it's like, if you come to me tomorrow, you're like, we want to dye his hair purple and bring him out there in like a oversized sweatshirt and call him Frederick.
Janet.
Yeah. I'll be like, sounds good. Let's do this. So.
Well, he's always been a guy that I was afraid to put Mikey in the ring with because I knew I'd get the shit kicked out of me.
Well, maybe one day you might have to, and maybe he's just as scared as you are of him, because the Mikey
old spider syndrome.
Yeah, Mikey Unlikely character. He's got way more charisma than he has. So,
well, way more charisma than wrestling ability. That's for sure.
Yeah, man. Mikey Unlikely is a great character too. He's fantastic. Defiance has been a lot of fun. Brian did not pay me to say that. You did not pay me to say that. It's been really cool. I have no real intention of stopping at all or anything. I think it's been great. Like there's real good writers in there, man. Like you are. I'm not just saying this. Like you are very good. And Brian is very good. Seth has 8 million guys, but I mean, so do I. So
hey, Seth, you're the new Seth Jr.
Whenever anybody says like, Seth, you have so many characters, I can't say anything in the chat.
You're that meme that has like the guy looking over his shoulder, like, oh, yeah. Don't look at me.
Yeah, like the hell. I mean, yeah, let's get on Seth. Come on, he's got 1 million characters. Seth is a great writer. There's all sorts. I love what my brother does with Malik Garland. He can rant about him in his interview, and like yeah, from everyone, from like, I think Billy's super underrated. He's a great writer. Tom, I've known the longest. Like Creepy Justin, Scott, everybody. Lynn's, they're all good. Even there's a place for Will sometimes. So I'll give him a little bit of a shout out too.
Emilio. Okay.
Emilio, buddy. That I know sometimes I'm a little much in the chat, but you gotta have you gotta liven it up occasionally.
You gotta have a little Emilio.
Oh, Will is definitely the life in the chat, though. He is.
Yeah, he drives the chat. Chat was dead before Will got in there, and then he just randomly woos or Emilios or blows the conch. He gets us all together.
I won't say it to his face, but he'll have to listen to this to get a shout out, to get his props. So yeah, Defiance has been great. That's kind of, I guess, through my brother, seeing him write and everything, I was like, sure, why not? I'll go give it a shot again.
That's awesome, and we're glad you did. We've had a lot of fun with you and Defiance, and obviously Gage Blackwood has grown a lot since that first pay-per-view I was talking about. He's grown up and grown up. So you've got he's now not a baby face any longer. He's become a heel, a mighty good one, and a great Southern Heritage champion.
Yeah. Thanks, man. I think it's easy to write with all you guys. You guys are very good. I'm just kind of hanging around there and just trying to get better.
Shut up.
Shut
up. You're a great writer. You write great stories. We're gonna blow each other for the next 30 minutes. Let's just
absolutely.
Get it over with.
Let's keep doing this. You press pause. We'll run some ads, and we'll do this.
We'll come right back to it. Yeah.
Was it good for you as it was for me? So I think
that's awesome.
I think I really do like the Gage Blackwood character. Has grown on me a lot. I think like my goal will be for the Fuse Brothers. Obviously, they'll be like a team again one day. But I think I'm just creating some self goals for myself of like, I really want to try and see if they can be successful in singles runs and what that can look like, and try and break.
Sure, exploring the characters a little more.
Yeah, just break a glass ceiling of a tag team, which Edge and Christian have done. Brett and the Hart Foundation and
Mikey and Kendricks have done.
Yeah. So we'll see. I think that'll be my goal. See if we can be as successful as I have been with Gage. So, yeah.
I'm excited. So let me ask you this. What made you bring the Fuse Brothers into Defiance?
Man. So yeah, I do have, so there's LLB, the Fuse Brothers. I have a few other main characters. I'd say I have about like 6 or 7 that I really like. And I don't know. I just love the Fuse Brothers. There's just something about the dynamic in my head about having, obviously, the older brother Tyler being really serious and just kind of a douchebag, kind of a sociopathic bully when he's a heel, but he's still a good guy inside. And then the absolutely annoying, idiot, dumbass brother who just loves video games and all the tropes, like
the achievements and the trophies. Yeah.
Yeah, like Tyler once was going to say, we won the Defiance Tag Team Championships. And Connor's like, you can't say championships. They're the achievements. Like Tyler rolls his eyes and it's like, God damn, man. Okay, achievements. So I just thought I'd have a lot of fun with that. Like the characters I think I hold closest to my heart are like LLB and the Fuse Brothers. They're like my children. So I was just like, let's do it. Let's bring them in and see what can happen. So
are we going to see an LLB return as well?
I will bring him back one day. I thought maybe if I got Action started or another place, I would, because there are some stories that I do really want to tell with him still, at least for a few years, that I think would be really good, at least good enough in my mind. And then I have like a few others too. I had a character called Caden Paulton, and he was just meant to be the nicest guy ever, just completely impervious to believing anybody could be bad. Like you could leave him bloody in the ring and he'd get up the next day and go to you and be like, wow, man, that was so cool. Like we had such a good match last week. I know you went a little too far, but I mean, wow, like if you ever want to fight again, let me know. And then leaves. People are like, the fuck?
What the fuck?
Yeah. So
There it is, Roland. I just wanted you to know. I told a couple of people my goal was to have you say one F word on this show. There it was.
It's funny because I was gonna ask you before and be like, man, I'm not gonna swear. Like, I don't want to swear. So
I
you
know.
allow swearing?
I told my wife, I said, this is the nicest guy I know at EFedding. I've got to get him to say the F word.
I will say, like, I try and always make a conscious effort in my characters not to put swearing in, and I think that can help with writing. Like, there's a time and a place for everything.
Sure.
Which I know there are numerous characters that do swear a lot, and I like that too. I think for me, it's like, no, don't have it. I think it'll work better if you don't, and just keep it out of your podcast too. Don't say anything. But hey, you're good at your job. What can I say?
Well, very good. I'm excited. Let's talk about, you are trying to take the Fuse brothers on singles runs, both in Defiance and now outside of Defiance. You've recently signed up to High Octane Wrestling with, was it Connor Fuse?
Yeah. So,
and only Connor.
Yeah, so that was a gamble, because I'm still kind of reading up and trying to catch up on High Octane Wrestling, or how, as I say, which I guess everybody says.
Everybody says, yeah.
That's a stupid comment. So, yeah, I wanted to try and do something different, and I wanted to take what I would consider to be maybe my like goofiest, non-serious character, and write for him in a role play fed that I really haven't been in like a role play fed before.
Sure.
And see what I can do. And again, the challenge is trying to walk that line between being a little bit too goofy and being a little bit too video game oriented, and then trying to create, hey, here are some other things about the character. Here are some other
flaws.
Things
Here's some,
he's about. And I did introduce in both places, he's got this big, stupid Bane like dummy beside him who's called the Game Boy. And he's like, basically, just think of Bane, but with a Super Nintendo mask on and wires going into his Nintendo Power Gloves, and it kind of a mix between Bane and the Birthday Boy on a Batman comic that I once read. But so like really challenging myself to just, hey, if I win, cool. If I lose, that's okay too. Like, I'll still try and I'll still try and get better. And yeah, challenge myself to like walk that line between like being a little bit too much and then also kind of keeping the character serious, where I think in Defiance, I'll probably just double down a little bit more on Connor with video game stuff, as I already kind of have. And
sure.
Tyler,
in an angle fed, it's easier to dive into the comedy, the drama, the story. Whereas the role play fed, you have to be funny, but yet witty and competitive.
Yeah. Witty, competitive, and like, as I'm learning already, really like open-minded to go with the flow, right? Because I don't know if I'm going to win this match or lose this match, or who I'm going to be placed with, or
you got to kind of roll with whatever happens on the show.
Yeah, and I think, I know some people who are like, I'll never do an angle place, or I know some people who are like, I'll never do a role play place, and I think obviously both have pros and cons, and it just depends what you're looking for. And yeah, I messaged Linz and I was like, hey, give me a little bit of a rundown on how, and I was like, sure, let's do it. The world's a little different these days. I got extra time on my hands, so see what we can do.
It was crazy. I was working on some EWT stuff with Brian. I was sitting here on a Sunday, and I got a call. My phone rang, and I picked it up, and I said, hello, and it was Lee Best. And he said, what do you know about Connor Fuse? And I just started dying. I said, oh, my God. I said, please tell me Roland applied. And he said, absolutely, he did. And I said, he's in. Bring him in right now.
Thanks, man.
I said he is the nicest guy in the universe. He's a great handler. I said, he's a solid writer. Definitely bring him in immediately. And I was so psyched just because I love that that's how I heard about it. I appreciate Lee giving me a call because it was so exciting.
That's cool, man. Thanks. You didn't have to do that. I think that's pretty cool. Obviously, like what you've done with Mikey and Likely in Defiance for sure, but in How To, is pretty fun and really good. And I think like I remember going to Howe and I looked at the roster and I looked at a few of the guys and I was like, yeah, I definitely want to write here. I definitely want to face Andy Murray, the tennis player, and have him beat me. Like I had this idea. I mean, again, then I'm like, oh, okay, this is role play and just go with the flow. But it's like, what if I just had Connor just challenge Andy Murray or Cale Murray right away? Because, in his head, it's like, let's just go straight to the boss and do this. And then obviously lose. I think I brought that up in the chat. I was like, yeah, I just want to go straight to the top and job to Andy Murray and never be heard of again. And Murray's like, we can make that happen. So I'm willing to go wherever. And I think like with a character like that, with Connor too, he can just write off a loss in a way. Still, I want to obviously give credit and put whoever over that beats him, but it's also like you can write it off as non-canon. It's like,
sure,
oh, man, they had cheat codes, or whatever. That was a different system. I upgraded, like,
yeah.
Whatever.
I'm still on the Unreal Engine. Yeah.
yeah. The cool thing I like about it too is like I clearly don't have all the answers for my characters, and like when Brian and I were doing an arc a few months ago, the Fuse brothers injured Scott Douglas and Carrie, and then he wrote the line in that said like Tyler pointed out the new knee brace on one of them and said, that's some nice DLC you've got there. It's like, that's good. You should take these guys. That's good, man. So yeah.
Nice. Other people get into it. Yeah, that's fun.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to how it should be fun. Everyone seems pretty cool in there, and I definitely can't wait to job to Cale Murray and never be heard of again.
I'm looking forward to you jobbing to me too.
Yes, that's a great segue.
We gotta get some fun stuff there. I'm excited to read your stuff and how I've read you as an angle writer only for the last 3 years, so I'm excited to see what else you got and how you're going to open up your repertoire to compete in a competitive environment.
Yeah, it's a scary world. We'll see. I don't know if I can, but I'll give it my best shot. So
see, I thought I was good until I got there, and now I'm like 6-4 or 5-4 or 5-5 or something. It's not that great.
Oh yeah, I said to myself, Roland, you apply. Like you could be 8, you could be 0-8. Are you okay with that? I'm like, yeah, I'm okay with that. Like it's gonna hurt my EFed ego, but I'll survive.
There you go. That's a great way to look at it. And How is a fun place. If you're looking for a very competitive, fun roleplay fed, check out howrestling.com.
Yep, definitely.
Very good. And let's talk about a little bit more about Defiance. You've been there you're a current Southern Heritage champion. You're a former tag team champion. What else do you see for yourself in Defiance moving forward?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously not getting into any spoilers or anything like that. I mean, you had a brief conversation a day or two ago, which has definitely piqued my interest. And again, my Gage Blackwood can bend and go wherever needed. I kind of have an idea for next arc on what I'm going to do with him and perhaps slowly bring him back around to a face, because the whole idea of him going heel was like, I don't know, in my head there, it's like he's just such a bitter person that when he came in, like, yeah, he wasn't the best, but his heart was like so big and he wanted to be like fighting the main guy so much, because at the time when Gage came in, we had the UTA invasion take over Defiance, and all the bad guys like Mikey Unlikely want to run the whole place. So I had this whole, like Gage.
And he does now. It just took 4 years.
Yeah, it did. And it was long overdue, but he does. So with Gage, I had him be like, go heel, because he just despised everyone, because it was like he said like the world is not about what you do right now or what you did in the past, it's what have you done for me lately. And his career was he was losing a little bit, so I had the fans kind of turn on him, and then he's just so bitter and angry that he was never the main guy at that beginning when he really wanted to be, when his heart was in the right spot, but like he clearly didn't have the talent yet. So hopefully spin that round in full circle where he realizes he was wrong to get mad at people for that, realizes that maybe now's the time that he can be that person.
Reach the upper echelon, yeah.
Yeah, and if he, respects everybody's opinion and respects that there was a time where he wasn't ready, and he needs to learn that, and he needs to know that, and he needs to just get over the fact that, like, a character like Oscar Burns got a title shot before him, right? Because Oscar Burns deserved it. So I think that's kind of where I'll go with him. And then, like I said, with the Fuse Brothers, it's like, Tyler is kind of a similar direction, Gage Blackwood, but yet different, where he's just so tied on, I need to break this idea that I'm a tag team wrestler, even though he probably already has broken it. In his head, it's not justified until he wins a singles championship.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
So, and I treat it maybe like, I remember Edge. I got back into WWE a little bit right when Edge was kind of getting that main event push. And it was the same for him, I believe, where he was like so obsessed with just winning the championship. I believe there was like a Raw where he actually won the title, but then they came back from commercial break and took it away from him because it wasn't done correctly. I can't remember the details.
You said Jericho?
Oh, Edge. Sorry, Edge.
Oh, Edge. I'm sorry. Yep.
Yeah. I can't remember the full details, but kind of channel something like that where he's just, this is not a success until I have won a championship. And, but always still keeping the brothers connected at times because they still love each other, for lack of a better term. And then Connor just kind of doubled down on fun and video games, but show that he has a pretty evil side too. And, just kind of go with the flow and see what happens. But I think that's where I'll take the characters.
That's awesome. I'm excited to see it. I know you and I had a conversation about some fun stuff we can do moving forward. Yeah. And I hope everyone's excited for that too, because it's going to be fun. So you recently joined the Defiance staff.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of. Unofficially.
Unofficially, my friend.
Basically, you've done everything, all of the work that Brian's too lazy to do. Oh, sorry, Brian.
So I completely agree. And I know when we listen to this back, he will have edited that out, right? So, he'll edit out my part about cinematic matches when we get to that stuff.
When we get there, yeah.
I'm a part of staff. I just want to be the paper boy. I'll put together the show outlines and stuff. I don't really want to direct.
You're not in on the creative. You're just in on helping support stuff.
But I realize how hypocritical that is too, because then I'm in the chat, right? And the guys will say something like, well, what if we do this or that? And then I'm like, oh yeah, or we could do A, B, and C. And it's like, Roland,
wait, shut up.
Shut up, dude. All right. You can't do both, you stupid hypocrite. So I know that. I think I just, right now, as maybe some of us do, have a little bit more time on our hands. So
we'll call you the Defiance liaison. How's that?
Yeah. That's cool. But look, I got all respect, like I said, in the world for Brian. I think he's a really good dude. I think he's a great writer. Tom and Seth too.
He's a fantastic Fed head.
Yeah, he really is. He really is. It's been, and I get along with him pretty well. And I realized outside of certain wrestling things, I agree with him 50% of the time. So, he's a good dude. It's a lot of fun to take part in things there, and I really do like just the notion that like Defiance has been around for a long time, so you can build off some history. And maybe, in my early e-wrestling days, to see a Fed run for a year was a long time, right?
Yeah, it's crazy, man. When I got there, I was like, man, this Fed's been around forever. And then I've been there 5 years.
Yeah. And I think that's the kind of thing for me, right? Like I'm writing still because I enjoy it, but I really do like the group that we have there. And I think everyone's pretty awesome. I know what we call him, Creepy Justin, just came back. He is a good dude, man. He's got some He's got some great ideas. I think he's a really good writer too. And I want to stay just for all you guys and to have some fun. And hopefully we can do, still write 5 years from now, you do part 2 interview with me for 5 minutes. We can still say we're right.
We're still fed together. Yeah, that'd be nice.
I know life gets in the way, right? And I know now a lot of people are married, have children and whatnot. But I think my whole argument is if to stay in even just one place, it only takes maybe an hour or 2 on a bi-weekly basis, right? So if you're not doing the staff stuff, you write a segment, you write a role play, and then that's it. So I think it's a good group, and I do anything for the guys if they need me to post whatever. I'll do it with a smile on my face, and then I have like a credit system where in the back of my head, maybe
they owe me.
Just one. I said that it came up like a week or 2 ago. Brian was like, "Hey man, thanks for doing this." I'm like, "Dude, anytime, except there's going to be this one time in a couple arcs. I need this to happen. Just this one thing. I need it. Give that to me."
And you're going to do it.
Yeah, you're going to do it. And then I won't ask again for another couple years. So
nice.
So hey, it's all good. Even if
it is literally the most drama-free place I've ever been.
Oh man. Yeah.
It's non-existent.
I had heard, I won't get into details, but I had heard stories of drama before I got there, or kind of a little tiny bit when I did, but I mean, it wasn't anything too bad. And it's when I think back to my time as a kid in some other places, because obviously I wasn't just in PIW or FWO, I was in some other ones too. Like it's crazy. And then I'll hear of some things in feds that are going on right now too. So I'm just, very grateful for everybody who's there. It really is drama free. And if you are looking for a place to write and you don't want to just hear Mikey promote it, then come join Defiance. It's another credit for me, Brian.
DefianceWrestling.com.
Yes.
All right, guys, that's what we got for the interview. Let's head on over to the question side of this fun experience. On the Discord, we got blown up for your questions.
That's
Roland.
Scary. That's scary.
We got at MDG Wrestling Game at first, our good friend Warren. He wants to know best memory from FWO and your worst memory.
With FWO, I mean, I was really only there for about like 6 or 7 months, and then my interest kind of left. So I think that was like probably my, like, what was it? Worst memory, best memory, worst memory?
Yep.
Yeah. So my worst memory, just kind of not really staying with it. But again, I can't blame myself too much. I was just a dumbass kid. Best memory. So when FWO was around and like I was in PIW and you knew of FWO as being like the best place, I read like every character, and I was obsessed with a few of them. There was one guy who wrote, and he was for the Boston Strangler, and I thought, excuse me, I thought he was he was great. There were a few others. There was a guy named Scott Slugger, and he was like a baseball player. I thought he was really great. And then the Flying Frenchie was the other one, and I thought that character was great. And I loved that the Fuse brothers actually got to have a match against Flying Frenchie and somebody else in FWO. I think I wrote it. It wasn't very good at all or anything. They lost. I remember the bros lost, and it was going to be the start of like a heel turn for them because everybody was cheating to win against them. And that was going to be the whole cheat code thing at the time that Connor was going to develop and be like, yeah, look at this. Like, we can do this stuff too, you know? So I thought that was really cool. Just getting an opportunity to go up against a character that I read that, like, when I'm such an impressionable, like 15, 16-year-old kid, I'm like, wow, this is cool. And then a year or two later, you're writing a match with them in it. So I really liked that. That was awesome.
That is awesome. Yeah, it's cool when you can get really into a character in a Fed and then you get an opportunity to come up against it and say, how would I react to this?
Yeah. And I mean, I considered all those guys to be like such elite writers at the time. And I'm just like this kid in the headlights being like, oh my God, I just write this match and hope it doesn't have one typo in it. And we'll just get out. So
nice.
Yeah.
His second question, can you cut a promo as Tyler Fuse?
I mean, I could, but I write Tyler to just be, and I realize I kind of have to watch that in my writing too, because I put a lot of times down that he's just stoic and he's he just stands there and he doesn't blink. Like there's some things I wish you could get over. Maybe I got to learn to try and do that. I can challenge myself to do that. But if it was real life, I just picture this like sociopath that's just standing there and just not blinking and just not saying a thing and just methodically like walking down the ramp. And then, just walks down the ramp and he will break your leg and then just calmly and easily walk and leave too. So my Tyler Fuse promo is just basically me staring into the podcast without blinking, which isn't going to,
which doesn't get over on the podcast.
Doesn't get over it. Now Connor is all about video games and system jumping, and that would be much easier to do. We're playing an online system game right now, with probably a 2-hour time limit, right?
That's right.
So you can't go over, you don't progress to the next level, and you need to have as many followers follow you as possible. This is exactly just like an RPG. So I also realized some of the terminology, like, Tyler and Connor would call people NPCs, like if this was real life, which I think would be super cool to have a wrestler call another wrestler an NPC. Maybe
think it's the biggest offensive thing ever.
Yeah. Maybe doesn't quite work in our hobby because we really do have NPCs. So there's some things I got to watch here and there, but my Tyler Fuse promo is just staring blankly into a screen.
Very good. Seth is Burns is up next. Our good friend with a man of 1,000 characters.
Yep, he's got a lot.
What is it like to be second best because you're only the man of 999,000 characters? Right.
So if it's next to Seth, I'm cool with that. If it's number 2 next to him, like that's not a bad place to be.
Amen.
I challenge that I might have just as many because I do have. I'm also writing. It was meant to just be for Uncut, which is the secondary show to Defiance. The Screen 7 characters, which they're meant to be like these 19-year-old pimple face freak movie lovers, which. I know it's really weird. It's probably the weirdest shit I've ever written right now. But I have an idea and a place that I want to go with them. They're 2 dummies with like one real badass wrestler. So I mean, I don't know. I might have just as many characters as Seth. They just might not be all available for public consumption at this time. So
we'll get them out of you eventually.
Yeah, eventually when I'm 20 years from now still doing this. So.
His next question is, where is Iceman?
Right. Okay. So I will quickly explain this because I love the story, actually. So I said, at the beginning when PIW got better, right? And John Cusimano was like building a legitimate website and then started to bring in legitimate handlers. Mostly a lot of bad handlers would realize they can't hang anymore and then they would kind of leave. Or it was a little RP based at that time. And John Cusimano would just job them out. So we had a guy who handled a character Blast from the Past, and it was just so typo ridden. Like it was the worst stuff you could ever see. But he would not leave PIW. So John created a character called Iceman, just a generic guy to team with him. And John Cusimano like jobbed these guys out all the time, nonstop. But this guy just kept writing for them. Like he wrote for Blast from the Past and then he started writing for Iceman. And he like never left. And a credit to him, I don't remember his name for the life of me, but I decided because the Iceman character was an NPC, I did make a comeback like 10 years or so ago, and I wrote in a place with Seth. Seth wrote with Andy Sharp at that time, and it was Iceman. And in a way, there's a lot of similarities between Iceman, I think, and Gage Blackwood, at least heel Gage Blackwood. He's just like this really disgruntled, angry guy who hates being a jobber. And he definitely swore, probably a little too much. So he is somewhere. I would love to, like I said, maybe one day again get action wrestling going, or find another home for like LLB, Caden Fulton, and Iceman, who are my kind of other 3 main guys. So he's somewhere right now in somebody's basement being very bitter about life. Very bitter.
We'll have to do a part 2 and a deep dive on those characters sometime.
Yeah, sure. Sounds good.
So His next question is, you have a knack for making outlandish gimmicks work really, really well. Has it always come easy, or is it something you felt you acquired over time? And based on our interview this far, I'm going to say you, right from LLB, you knew that you could do outlandish characters.
So thank you, Seth. That's a really nice compliment. Don't necessarily think it's warranted again. However, I think like that's the thing, right? You've got, if I tell you, okay, I got a character, he's a wrestling lawyer, and he says, I rest my case and objection and testify and you're guilty and all this nonsense. You still have to have a sense of reality to it. You still can't just push them way over the edge. So there's still a lot of human elements that I want to try and build into any of my characters, and that's the challenge with Tyler and Connor too. And like I also look at Tom and Billy, PCP, like they have really outlandish tag team characters. One is named the D, right? Which I think is
so
just,
great.
Man, names
and O-Face, yeah.
Names that I'm like, how did this not happen before? Like the D it's so good. But there's other elements to them, like when they did their breakup angle and they fought over the Soher. So there's elements there. There's realistic elements to always take. Like with the Fuse brothers, I always want to push that, like Connor, as eccentric and annoying as he is so loyal to his brother Tyler. Like he loves him. He will do anything for him. And Tyler, even though he's just such a dick and he hates everybody, there's still this like small little place in his heart for Connor, and he would do anything for him too. And the two will never split whatsoever. Well, never say never in wrestling. There might be something that will happen one day, but so
there'll be a princess in a castle someday.
Absolutely, there already is. He said Tyler's already got Princess Desire, his wife, by his side. So, but yeah, just trying to find and I think you can say that for real wrestling too, right? You have gimmicks; they can only take you so far. Then you have to have obviously wrestling skill, and then you have to have some kind of human elements to things.
Well, let me do a takeoff on Seth and ask you this. Why have you always leaned towards comedy, or is there a specific reason you think that you've always leaned towards a character that would relate in a comedic sense? Yeah.
So what I would say to that is, I think with LLB for sure, it certainly does sound comedic now, but it was never written like that. He was pretty serious, because I had, like, as a heel, he would be the smartest guy in the room and could, kind of
manipulate.
Manipulate. That's perfect. He's a manipulator because he's a lawyer, and he would always be like 5 steps ahead of people. And particularly now, I would love to write with him, because I feel like I'm at least a better writer now than I was when I was a kid, and really build something like a real revealing storyline to show that, like, wow, LLB was actually behind this the entire time. Maybe even when he was face or something along those lines. But certainly with the Fuse brothers, they definitely started out to be comedic. And probably Iceman too, to some extent. But I think, like, I don't know, I find an interest in being like having a little bit more comedy, but then maybe like challenging myself to be like, no, like comedy characters can have realistic aspects. They can be serious at times, and there shouldn't be a glass ceiling for anybody, is my opinion. I'm not saying that there ever was on me, at all or anything. I'm just saying that in general, in real wrestling. And I mean, I know I brought up Orange Cassidy before in AEW, but I think I just use it as an example. Like, you can still take that character that just puts his hands in his pockets and doesn't do much outside of that, and you could still get people behind him.
A national person, yeah.
If you have Chris Jericho beat him with a bunch of oranges, which sounds funny, but you leave him literally bloody in the ring. Like, there should be nothing funny about a man who is bloodied in the ring and just went from like comedy to serious. I remember Jericho on his podcast once explained how much he hated the Ambrose angle with the Mitch the Potted Plant, because I guess Jericho and Ambrose were feuding, and I don't know, one of them gave one of them a potted plant, Mitch the Potted Plant, and Jericho like cracked it over Ambrose's head. But the announcing team treated that as a joke, where he was like, no, this is like that dark moment where you realize we're not in a comedy anymore, we're in like a horror movie, you know? So I think that's a challenge. Maybe it's always in the back of my head. It's like, I want to take some guys that are meant to be more fun, and when the time is right, you can make them more serious, and then you can pull it back and forth and back and forth. So I think maybe that the comedy stuff just gives me a base to go off of, to go a little bit further, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And it's something I've leaned on heavily my writing career too.
Yeah, that's a really good point, you know, and that is what Mikey Unlikely is to a sense.
He is a comedy character, yeah. Who's just evolved into something more serious and more of a con man over time.
Absolutely. And I love that whole con man aspect, and I love the whole like underlining. He's like, at least to me, this is how I kind of read him, but like, he's not a good wrestler. Like,
no, he's terrible.
He's a shit wrestler, but like, you just want to strangle him, and you just want to see somebody get his hands on him. And if you can add different layers to any character, real life storyline, doesn't even have to be wrestling, TV shows and stuff like that, I think that's when you can really be successful. So I guess perhaps in the future, when I create a new character, I'll make it serious straight from the start, and we'll go from there.
I'll be interested to see that. Yeah, so we'll see what happens. Seth's last question. Tyler Fuse versus Connor Fuse versus LLB versus Gage Blackwood. Who wins and how?
Okay, so Gage Blackwood would not be in the match because the Fuse brothers are technically LLB's younger brothers, so let's just have the brothers all fight. Gage can be the ref, and Gage is the serious character that I have. So
yep.
So I guess there is one. So okay, and the three of them fighting. Connor Fuse wins because nobody gives credit to the little brother, although I guess the middle child doesn't really get a lot of respect either at times. So Tyler or Connor win the match, and LLB can save his millions of dollars in fame for another time.
There you go. Judge Megan is up next.
All right.
5BW owner. Are you down with the sickness?
I am always down with the sickness. That is a very, man, who sings it?
The Disturbed.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Disturbed. Yeah, that's new.
No. I deserve that tone of voice being like, you're dumb. How do you not know it's The Disturbed? That's very attitude era-ish question. So I am always down with the sickness. Absolutely.
Nice. At Rosseron, this is your brother.
Yeah. Great. Yeah.
Do you ever intend to bring LLB back?
Yeah, definitely. One day in the foreseeable future, say a year or two, I would love to. There was the IGS. It was a International Wrestling or International Grapplers Society. It was a couple years ago. Someone I knew, he opened up a new EFed, and I did join as LLB, but it lasted 2 shows and then it closed. So I did try to bring him back for a little bit, and I will definitely within the next year or two for sure.
Nice.
He's my most famous guy, so yeah. In my mind,
I'm excited because I'm it's completely out of my realm or out of my circle, so I'm excited to read it. Quite frankly, when will we get an announcement about the return of the XHL?
Right.
And quite frankly, will the Toronto Uppity Suits be a team? Quite frankly.
Right. So I know this because he's my brother. He's saying quite frankly a lot because he's pretending to be Vince McMahon, who drops quite frankly all the time. Right.
Quite frankly, if I'm offended.
When I ran Action Wrestling, that was when the XFL was starting too, right? So of course my Reed Young character, who is a billionaire who wants to do whatever,
created the Extreme Hockey League.
I even went so far, I think, as to write like one match for it, and it just involved like a third team coming in with steel chairs and taking them all apart. Like we went like if it was legit wrestling. So if I bring Action Wrestling back one day, the XFL 100%, XHL 100% is coming back with chairs and what anybody can think of, and the most outrageous. We'll name each franchise after wrestling characters in the organization. Well, for sure. That was a lot of fun, and I totally forgot about that.
I love throwbacks like that. It always gets you excited. Yeah. Crimson Scott, who has been your favorite tag team and singles to feud with?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think singles, I really liked, I mean, a lot of the feuds that I was in. I loved what Seth and I did with Oscar Burns and Gage Blackwood. It's like they didn't have a history, but they have a history because they both kind of came in at the same time. Really kind of channeled a bit of like John Cena, Batista type of thing there, where they both like,
Nice.
excelled at the same time. And it pretty much just wrote itself. So I really did like that. And that was really cool for Seth to let Blackwood go over. I owe a lot of people for the big Blackwood push, which will get its payoff when he drops the Southern Heritage title eventually to somebody else. So I think that was singles. Tag team, I liked what Scott and I did with the Toy Box. I think the Toy Box are a lot of fun. I think he has two really good characters there, and I was really glad that he brought them back. I think
Agreed. Underrated characters.
Yeah, absolutely underrated character. He's a really underrated writer himself. I like what he's doing.
No, he's an absolute powerhouse of a writer. I put him over every time he's like, I've brought him up on the show.
Yeah.
Crazy amount of writing in very little time.
Yeah, he's great. What he does with the Defiant is super awesome.
The best review. I mean, if you're gonna do feedback on a show, what Scott does with the Defiant is the coolest concept I've ever read. I eagerly await for him to drop the Defiant so I can read about my shithead heel tactics.
Man, he's such a good guy because like he'll message me. I'll be like, "Hey, Tyler Fuse took apart that non-playable character on Uncut. What kind of injuries do you want me to report on?" I'm like, "Man,
it's
whatever."
it's so cool.
Like, you put whatever down, and that is cool with me, man. So
shout out to Scott.
Yeah, I really like doing stuff with him. You know what? I don't give Stuvens enough credit either. The Stuvens dynasty is they're fun. He does write some really like D-bag like heels, and I do like that. And I think what I'm really excited for I know it was a past question, but Ross and I have something planned eventually for Fuse Brothers and his tag team, which I think I'm really excited for. So
that's awesome. At Highlander 4H, Ron Hall, McDonald, the best advice you ever got while in the hobby?
So John Cusimano, when he first came in and he took things over, right? And like I said, we were kind of ascending. There was a lot of pushback from some other writers and other feds being like, well, PIW is not an elite place because it's got too many typos or it doesn't have that many great writers. And he said something I really like still, that was, it doesn't matter if people are saying good things about you or bad things about you. At least they're talking about you. And that has always stuck with me. I think to varying degrees that can be appropriate or not. But I do like that. I think in any area of life, not just with a hobby, but in anything, maybe someone who is a little bit critical of you, it doesn't always have to be a bad thing. It can be taken as a good thing. They're at least talking about you. So yeah,
I love that. We recently did a monthly Q&A for the EFed podcast. And the question was asked, what do you think of the haters or something along those lines? And my thought process was, hey, at least they're talking about me.
Yeah.
At least their friends know about me.
And like, I know this sounds so like rainbows and dandelions and happiness and whatever, but you can't be everything to everybody, right? So like someone out there is not going to like what you write, or someone is not going to like your character, but there will be other people that do. Like, you might not be everything to everybody, but you can be something to someone, and someone will like what you've got. And
sure, don't change everything based on one person's opinion. I mean, go with what you enjoy writing and go with what gets the best feedback.
Yeah, and I think still keep some feedback in mind. I believe there was a time where I was trying to write Gage Blackwood because he's from Scotland to have this like real thick Scottish accent, and somebody on the forum said, I don't know, this isn't really working. So now I just have this like Gage mode.
Subtle, yeah.
Yeah. So I call it like, it's rage mode, but Gage mode, where when he gets so mad, I go into this like Scottish slang, and I kind of write it pattern right off a friend that I have over here.
It's the old Ricky from I Love Lucy. When he gets mad, he gets really Spanish.
Yeah. You wouldn't. I say like, you wouldn't understand him when he's angry. So So anyways, there's there's good feedback and even bad feedback you can look at, like someone who's just like, yeah, this was shit or this wasn't for me. You can always still look at that too. Just don't get all tied up in it. And hey, at least they read what you put out there. So
Nice. Best advice you would give to someone new in the hobby today?
I mean, the same kind of thing. Don't get discouraged. Just learn and grow. Like we were all at that point where we weren't a great writer, or we were, doing terrible angles, or I said, well, yeah, why don't you go date your mom, and hit enter on a 4-sentence role play and was like, man, I'm good,
I'm going to win this match,
How is LLB not the champion? He hasn't even dipped into his gimmick yet, so.
Your mom is the worst, no.
Yeah, just have fun, and and whatever you're doing in the hobby is like it's just as warranted as anybody's who's had 10 years experience or 5 years experience or whatever the case may be. So I know Defiance has got some new people writing right now, and I think they're just as good as anybody else. They'll just need time to build their characters, and hopefully they can stick around. So
true story.
Yeah.
Someone you wanted to work with but never gotten the chance to?
I guess I kind of put that in my answer before. Like whoever wrote the Boston Strangler and FWO, I should go on like a hunt to find this person.
Yeah, hire an investigator.
Yeah, to bring this person back, because that was the best stuff that I've ever read. I love the character. That was super cool. I know FWO is still kind of on the Wayback Machine, which I have looked it up, but I've never. I guess it didn't archive that specific year where that handler put out like a really good role play series that I still kind of remember to this day. So that would be the person, definitely.
How much did Mikey pay you to appear on this show?
He did not pay me. I should be paying him.
Wait, you guys are getting paid?
Yeah, I should be paying you for taking the couple hours out of your day to do something like this. But yeah, definitely did not pay me.
Nice. At Spectacular Disaster, our good friend Pete, buy his book over on Amazon.com.
Of course.
What would have been your dream TA storyline?
So yeah, TA, the Asylum. I didn't really get into that too much, but I really liked writing there. And I did come back in between like Action and Defiance. I think I said when I joined that one place that Seth was in, and then the Asylum came back too. So I wrote there for a year. I'll very quickly explain this. I wrote a character called Miles Blunder, which, I mean, I guess, yes, it is somewhat comedy. He'd work really well in today's world. He wears basically just a pair of boxers and this big plastic rubber suit because he's afraid of people's germs, and and a gas mask. He doesn't want to get any germs on him whatsoever. He carries like a Swiffer, like it was e-fighting, so you're allowed to kill people and really be gory. So he carried a Swiffer wet jet with him, where when he clicks the top, some spikes come up from the bottom, and he'll just, if the character was going to get wasted, he'll just slice your head off or poke you in the back with that. And he had poor circulation in his hands because his hands were all blue. So that was my character. I guess probably would have liked to just have done a lot more with him in the first time in Asylum, and then definitely in the last time. I know Pete has written some really good characters. I loved Des Aragon. That was one of my favorites that in all the hobby that's been written. I would have loved to have done something with him a little bit more in the Asylum there. No full direction on a storyline, but just, yeah, more interaction on that level.
Very good. Up next, we got Queen Linda's OG.
Yep.
In the Discord. Who is your parents' favorite between you and Rossaron?
It's no doubt it's Ross. No doubt. I am
Oh, that's a swerve. I thought it was going to go you until he got his interview.
No, he's a quiet dude. He's a good dude. Obviously, get along with him. He's all right. But he's a quiet dude. He's pretty respectful. I was always the big mouth kid growing up, and the one causing all the problems and whatnot. So it's
that's hard to believe.
It's no doubt it's him. However, if they wanted to choose an e-wrestler, the LLB would be hands down. They don't know anything about the hobby, but they would choose LLB. Absolutely.
Nice. When are you getting Rosteron to join High Octane Wrestling?
I mean, he can join. He's his own person, so he can do whatever he wants, whenever he wants. I think he's pretty happy just writing in the angle feds. I know he'll read my stuff over in house. So hey, if he wants to jump on in, he can.
Maybe he'll get the itch.
Yeah. He's his own dude, so he can do whatever he wants. He was his decision to come back as well. So
nice. Well, up next we got Will, and Will's got 1,400 questions for you. So let's try to hit him rapid fire.
Okay.
Roland, are you going to be late to your own funeral?
Absolutely, I'm late for everything.
Roland, why are we going to get an apartment together?
I was going to move to New York City. I had kind of a job lined up, and then this pandemic hit, and I'm not American. So once this pandemic is over, and perhaps I can get my way back down there again, we'll get a place together.
There you go. Roland, on a scale of 1, which is rainy as fuck, to 10, which is rainy as fuck, how is the rain in the UK?
It is always raining here in Edinburgh, so it is a 1 and a 10.
Roland, what's your favorite melted ice cream drink to have?
Dude, wow. Will really that's the way to have ice cream. For the record, you just let it melt and you drink it. Maybe pour some milk in there too. So cookie dough.
Well, that's called a frappe.
Yeah, I'm all about that. So cookie dough.
Cookie dough ice cream. Yeah. Nice. Roland, do you think you can compete with Seth for a total number of EFed characters?
Absolutely. Bring it on. Let's do this.
Roland, are you okay with everyone liking your brother more than you?
They should. They should.
You popped me with that one.
I'm annoying AF, and they no doubt they should. He's a good dude.
Roland, do you hate your brother because we think he's cooler than you?
No, man. I'm proud of him and everything that he's accomplished in and outside the hobby, and everybody can like him more. I'm more than happy.
I hope he asks Ross the same questions.
Yeah, we'll see.
Roland, where do you get all your inspiration for 1001 characters?
I got a lot of voices in my mind, man. It's scary. I think that's where I try and take like little pieces of versions of myself and then see if I can create some character with them. So I think that, I don't know, man. I work in the mental health field. So I've opened up my old textbooks before too and looked through, be like, can I build a character like that? But yeah, anyways.
Perfect. Love you, Roland, from Will.
Yeah.
Love you, Will.
Love you, Will. You're all right, man.
He just wants to get a love you, Will, in every episode.
Yeah, fair enough. I said it once. I won't say it again.
Okay. Up next is Rick, TEFPOG.
Yep.
Is your mom hot?
So I don't know Rick, but I'm pretty sure I read on the forum he's from Toronto, or he's from
Canada.
Yeah,
he's not from Toronto, but he is from Canada. Yes.
I think I read on it was older though, and I didn't want to reply to it. But he was like raving about like Western University or some garbage university that he thinks is cool that he went to, and everyone knows that Brock University was the best one because I graduated from there. So my mom, you can judge whatever you want. I'm not touching that one.
Rick he's somewhere between Detroit and Toronto, whatever that midpoint is.
Okay, so I mean, there's London, Windsor. There's a bit.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Okay.
Next is she's single.
No. Unfortunately,
sorry, Rick.
Not. Yep, sorry.
Okay, yeah, they've got a little nice Canadian story there.
I'll have to message him and see. He posted a Toronto Maple Leafs picture in the chat there, and I was like,
he's a great guy. I love Rick. He's a great supporter of the show. He's a fun guy in high octane wrestling. He's just all around always funny and always nice.
He seems like a good dude. Yep.
So up next is going to be Jordan Snow. What's the status of Action? Relaunch?
Absolutely. One day for sure. That's not to take away from anywhere else, but I think I'll have enough energy to do something like that. I would love to. Would love to bring Reed Young back and LLB back. They were kind of tied at the hip to Joker and Batman with different stories going on there. One day for sure. Hopefully in the next few years, we'll see how things go.
Awesome. Darren Zion wants to know from High Octane, Do you know the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise?
I do not.
It's a Star Wars reference. He wanted to know if you were a fan.
Oh, so here's where you might cut me off after this. I'm all Star Trek. I can't get into Star Wars. I'm sorry.
Oh, buddy, I'm all Star Trek too.
Oh, good.
100%. Oh, I'm so glad to hear you say
man.
that. Yes.
We just became best friends because
Yes. Late 60s version is tremendous. Next Generation is even better in my eyes.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm a Next Generation fanatic right now. It's fantastic. Data is the best character of all time.
Man, I love all the series, and when I was a kid, I loved the Next Generation, and I didn't really know a whole lot about it. I just see it kind of occasionally. I've only really gotten into it since the rebooted movies, and then just watched pretty much everything. And just to quickly say, like, I swear to you, I've tried to get into Star Trek. I can't. I fall. Or Star Wars, and I just fall asleep.
I'm with you. My dad was a Star Wars guy, but me and my wife we kind of stumbled upon the old Star Trek.
Yeah.
And enjoyed it so much. I'm a big sci-fi guy. I've got a giant tattoo on my arm of just space.
Cool, man.
Just space. I just love space, and so we've been watching the Star Trek's The Next Generation. We've been watching it like religiously. It's been amazing. So I'm glad to hear you say that. Fuck Star Wars.
Dude, absolutely.
I just alienated half my audience.
I had the slip of the tongue, the Freudian slip, and said Star Trek I hated. So, I mean, who knows? Anyways, yes.
Very good.
You're damn cool in my books, man. That's awesome.
We're going to start having some inside jokes on the Def Chat, I think.
Yeah.
Perfect. We're going to move to Jason Reeves, Stalker.
Yep.
Can we have a Game Gear tournament?
Yeah, I mean, I hate the screen on Game Gear. It's funny, I write these video game characters, and I don't know that much about video games. I'm just kind of a Nintendo fanboy because I'm 5 years old. And with the bros, I also have to look up video game titles all the time to use them as titles in my role play and do kind of quick reading on the games because I don't even know some of them. So Game Gear wasn't really my thing, but yeah, we can do it. Yeah.
Nice. What is your dream Defiance stable?
I guess I'm kind of building it these days, even though it's separate. So you got Connor Fuse, he's got the Game Boy by his side. You have Tyler Fuse with his wife, Princess Desire. One day, kind of bring them together. We can have this big Fuse Brothers franchise of 4 or 5 guys. Yeah, I think that's the name of the stable. I want what's a video game? Like, what do you call numerous video games? You call it like of the same thing. It's a franchise. So Fuse Brothers franchise, dream stable. One day.
What about dream stable of your characters?
Yeah, that's fair. That's probably where you're going with the question.
I think so.
I turned it into something about myself.
Well, look at me.
Didn't mean to be conceited like that. My bad. I mean, I won't get into anything further. I think there's a lot of people that can work really well with Mikey Unlikely. I think him having some minions by his side would be really cool. I think also like a big super team, the Super Friends faces. You get like Oscar Burns, Scott Douglas, and PCP in there as maybe
as some comedic relief.
Yeah, as the comedic relief. You get the.
No, I love those guys. I would love to see PCP take a serious run, but still sprinkle in some jokes.
Absolutely, I think both of them on PCP are overdue as well for big singles pushes and
amazing handlers.
I know Brian will go against it, but I think Scott Douglas is a damn good character and he's written terrifically. And
he's so good.
Yeah, he's one of the best and can be right up there too. So,
but Brian wants to be Roddy Piper. He doesn't want to be Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, I mean, that's a story for another time and a whole rant that I've gotten into him about things because he's like that. The Cody challenging Jericho and saying if he'd lose, he'd never challenge again for the title was a really good story that he should do for Douglas or something, but it's already been used. I'm like, anyway, story for another time. Douglas is a great character. He should be the Fist one day. Brian, shut the hell up.
There you go. What makes something lit? Fam.
You just, you take a match, you strike it, and it's lit. Pretty simple.
It's pretty lit, fam.
Yep.
What would you like to see Defiance do in the future that hasn't been done yet? Interesting.
Okay. I didn't really look at the questions beforehand, but I did see this one and like instantly jumped in my head. Cinematic match, which I'm like, if you say that,
Brian's going to cancel the interview.
Will cancel the interview and delete it. Just one minute pitch.
It's going to be, hey, Roland, welcome to the show. You're a great handler. You've got the Fuse Brothers and Gage Blackwood. Okay, that was a lot of fun. Excited to have you on next time.
Look, I'm not saying it's got to be on pay-per-view. I'm not even saying it's got to be on Def TV. It could be on like a role play. But I want to do one cinematic match with the Fuse Brothers. Call it like Castlevania or something like that. I got to give Ross credit for that. He gave me that. Whatever it is, I just want to try one. I want to try and do it serious and fun. Put it out there and then just send it to Brian. And I just want him to give me a one-word reply. Be like, yes or no. And that's it. So one day, cinematic match. It doesn't even have to be my character. Cinematic match. That's what I want to see.
Well, here you go. Last question from Creepy Justin, as we call him. If you had one pick, who is the Fist right now?
Oh, Mikey Unlikely.
Oh,
100%.
Well, thank you, sir.
Well deserved. Long overdue. Absolutely excellent written character. Such a D-bag character in a good way.
He is me.
He like, it's funny because I met you and we hung out, right, and stuff, and like of course he is you. He is you to a point, a little bit here and there, and obviously with the dial turned up, and I mean that in a complimentary type of fashion.
I've got an ego, but I'm not. How do you say this? I've got an ego, but I'm not over. I'm not crazy, but my character is crazy.
Yeah, hey, it's all good. You can even have a full-blown ego. You deserve it. And and I think I also really did like when Kendrick came back too. I like that the breakup there of your duo as well. So I thought that was really interesting.
Good. You're the first person to say that. So
no,
appreciate it.
I really did. So the Fist is Mikey Unlikely, but there's this friend that's kind of off in the corner that maybe one day could come back. He could steal things from you. We'll see.
And we'll add the third name of Scott Douglas because I know that's also your answer.
Absolutely, Scott Douglas too.
Awesome. Well, let's see what else we got. We got Brian up next. No, actually, let's do one last Creepy Justin.
Okay.
Why is Raiden your favorite MGS character?
Raiden is not. Raiden is the worst character to ever happen to Metal Gear franchise. When I bought Metal Gear, so I'm a big Metal Gear fan, which I know Brian is, and we've had these rants in the chat before. We both hate Raiden, and my brother swears by Raiden and loves him. So 2 quick things I want to say to that. One, when Metal Gear Solid 2 was out, the tanker is awesome, and then you play with this dumb Raiden character. Do you know about Metal Gear a bit, Mikey, or am I just...
I know about Metal Gear Solid, I want to say 1 and 2 from the original PlayStation.
Yeah, okay.
I do not know anything about PlayStation 4 version and beyond.
That's cool. You just need to know 1 is good.
I know Solid Snake. I know, what are the other ones? Liquid Snake.
Yeah.
I know enough to be dangerous. Let's put it that way.
So all fine characters, but you don't know about Raiden, do you?
I do not.
Absolutely. Case and point. This part of the question is over. You don't know about him. He's a terrible character. Moving on.
Nice. That was a nice way to sum it up.
Yeah.
Use it on yourself. Use it on them.
Just came to me.
Okay. Up last, Brian, TEFP producer, our good friend and Fedhead and aficionado. Why are cinematic matches the worst thing to happen to wrestling since the Shockmaster?
So they're not, and you will see. I will convince you with one cinematic match in the next year. Just one.
Good, and that's why he had a follow-up question. 1A, why are you like this?
I have significant issues, and in a very serious way, though. Like, I do appreciate everybody, and I like having fun with all the guys. So it's and girl in Defiance. So yeah, I like being the way that I'm at, and I'm glad that I can annoy people at times.
Nice. Yeah, that was funny that he predicted your answer.
Yeah, of course.
Number 2, maybe something I should know, but why the last name Fuse?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think when I created the characters, like I don't even know why they had the name Tyler and Connor. They were just names. I guess I thought of something that like I want to spark or something like that. What can spark? What sounds good? And I was just like Fuse Brothers. Sure, let's do this.
Nice. Yeah, spark. I see that. His final question, and most importantly, because I assume you're already put over Defiance the entire show.
Absolutely.
Why is Metal Gear the most best?
It's good. It is good. I would suggest to anybody, if they do listen to this and they do like Metal Gear, the original Nintendo games are where to go first. So there's like Metal Gear. It's not called Metal Gear Solid, but that's what we had as kids, and my dad would play it, and my brother and I would watch. So we got into Metal Gear like right from the very beginning. The Nintendo games are really good too. So it is. Maybe it's not the best because I like Zelda and Mario because I'm 5. But it's right up there. It's right up there.
I just got a Switch and I've been playing the Mario game for the Switch. It's so much fun.
Oh man, yeah. There's Switch is a really good system. It's
underrated. I got the Lite, so it's very easy to travel with, which is what I was going for. I was tired of carrying my PlayStation everywhere.
Cool. What color did you get?
I got the regular silver.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Switch is good, man. Yeah.
Awesome, Roland. That's what we got for the questions, but I'll let you get one more thing in before we go. Anything else you want to put over, plug, Defiance? You want to hit them with the links and everything else?
Right. So defiancewrestling.com, right? That's right.
That's right.
Okay, that's right.
Defiancewrestling.com.
Yeah. And then How as well. So How Wrestling.
HO Wrestling.
Yeah,
HO Wrestling.
Yes. HO Wrestling. Great place to go. But on a serious note too, man, like thank you very much for doing this. It's probably a pretty thankless job on your end to take 2 hours out of your day. Whenever you do this, really appreciate it. Appreciate that you're kind of like the e-wrestling ambassador, growing the game out. I mean, I know you laugh and I do kind of say it like a fun voice, but I mean that too, man. And I think what you and Brian as well have done, and then with EFed Tees and trying to grow the game out a little bit more, I think it's great. I'm all for that. I'm all for, get more people involved along those lines. And I think you are a great spokesperson for that, along with Brian. So thank you very much for putting up with my nonsense in this couple of hours.
Thanks, Roland. I appreciate that. It's been a lot of fun. It's nice to see that we've had an impact here on the show, just getting people back into the game who maybe have taken a break. We've given them the itch again.
Yeah.
We've gotten Defiance to grow in spectacular numbers, which has been fantastic. Great exposure. And I'm just happy to be a positive part of the game, because the game's been such a positive part of my life.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it really has been. And for me, yeah. And for a number of people. And I think it's just, I would love to 5 years from now, it doesn't have to be a podcast or anything, but just still sit and talk to you and be like, yeah, the past 5 years of Defiance or whatever happens, that we're still writing, having a good time. And I'll meet up with you, Andy Murray, the tennis player, and Stevie in Berlin one day. Which
Berlin,
awesome.
Yes.
So
it was a lot of fun, and we got to meet up at a Chicago Bulls game in Chicago, so that was a lot of fun. It was nice to meet you then.
Yeah, man.
And it's even more fun to still keep in contact and keep doing this kind of stuff. So really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show. It's been a lot of fun, and I still think you're better than your brother.
Well, thank you, and the check is in the mail. So
awesome. Thanks, Roland, so much.
You take Mikey money, right?
Always.
All right. Mikey,
only accepted here, baby.
You're welcome, man. Mikey money is in the mail.
That was a lot of fun. Love having my friends on the show. It's always easier when I'm interviewing people that I've written with, hung out with, all of the above. Roland is a mixture of all of the above as well. We've had a great time together, and I'm looking forward to writing with him as he moves forward in his Defiance and high-octane career. Guys, this has been the EFed Podcast. Thanks to all our sponsors. Thanks to all of our Patreons over at patreon.com/EFed Podcast. Thanks to each and every one of you for taking the time out of your day to listen to my show. It's very humbling, and I appreciate each and every one of you. I love this game. Been playing for 20 years, and the support we've gotten for the podcast, for the EWT store, it's been phenomenal. Check out EWTees.com/EFedTees.com. Either or will get you into that store. EWmerch.com might even work too. So check those out. That's where you can get a custom t-shirt for your wrestler, your stable, your fed, whatever. We've got many custom t-shirts for wrestlers you already know over there. Many feds you may have heard of. Check it out. Custom design creation, we can do that for a fee, or we can get your custom logo already up there. Hit us up on the Twitter machine, in the Discord, wherever, on Facebook. We've been blowing up on Facebook too. It's great to see. Guys, thanks so much for supporting the EFed podcast, either through the ads, the Patreon, listening, doing whatever you can. EWTs, it's been fantastic. Love your support. Love doing the project. Brian and I will catch you next week here on the EFed podcast, where the wrestling is written, but the characters are real.
On Patreon.